The train brakes screamed against the rails, a long metallic cry swallowed by the desert heat. Dust shot up in a wide cloud as the eastbound engine shuddered to a stop at Burnt Creek Station. Before the air settled, a small voice cut through the noise. Nobody wanted my mom with 9 kids. Lottie Hale, thin as a fence slat, her braided hair half undone from the journey, stood clutching the worn skirt of her mother. She didn't whisper the words. She simply said them, soft but certain, like a truth already too heavy for her small chest. Margaret Hale stiffened but didn't correct her. She just tightened her grip on the baby she carried, her face pale from exhaustion and sun. The station platform fell painfully quiet. Boots scuffed. A woman coughed. Someone turned away. The wind dragged grit across the wood. And from the far end of the platform, leaning in the shadow of the telegraph post, a lone cowboy lifted his eyes. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He only watched, the way a man watches something that hits a place he hoped was buried. The station master cleared his throat. "Town's got no boardin' for numbers this large," he muttered. He stepped back as if stepping away from trouble. A ranch foreman spit in the dust. "Ain't nobody talkin' on 9 mouse," he said. "Hard enough keepin' a place fed with just 2. The baby whimpered. The smallest boy tugged Margaret's sleeve. "Mama, we ain't stayin' on this train no more, are we?" "No," Margaret answered quickly, though her voice trembled. "We're not." The train whistled again, impatient, ready to leave. Coal smoke drifted, curling around mother and children like a fading veil. Lottie looked around the platform, faces turning away, boots edging back, a world shrinking to cold shoulders, and murmured pity. She blinked fast, but one tear still slid down her dusty cheek. "We can sleep right here," she said bravely, pointing to the wooden boards beneath their feet. "It's not so bad." Margaret forced a smile that hurt to hold. "We'll see, sweetheart." But the truth was bare and sharp. They had nowhere. The relatives who promised a place had sent a telegram refusing them. The town was full of strangers. The sun was sinking, and the wind bit as the desert cooled. No one stepped forward, except, quietly, deliberately, the cowboy shifted. He didn't push through the crowd. He didn't hurry. He simply walked with the slow certainty of a man who'd spent years deciding not to care about anybody, and suddenly found himself caring anyway. Dust stretched behind him as he approached. Lottie saw him first. She tugged Margaret's sleeve again. "Mama," she whispered, "the man in the hat is coming." Margaret turned, and her breath caught. The cowboy looked carved from the very land around them. Sun-weathered skin, a long coat faded by wind, shoulders broad beneath the weight of years on horseback. His boots were scuffed to the color of old bone. And his eyes, gray as storm clouds, held no threat, only a quiet ache. He stopped a few paces away. Removed his hat. "Ma'am," he said, voice low, steady. Margaret shifted the baby higher on her shoulder, unsure. The children fell silent, watching him with wide eyes. "You folks got somewhere to go?" he asked. Margaret's lips tightened. Pride rose before truth. "We're looking." Lottie lifted her chin. "Nobody wants us," she said bluntly. "'Cause there's too many of us." A crack ran through Margaret's composure, but she nodded once, because lies didn't help children. The cowboy's gaze moved across all 9 small faces. Something unreadable flickered behind his eyes. Not surprise. Not pity. Something older. He inhaled slowly, like bracing for a memory. But he didn't answer. Not yet. The wind pushed at his coat. A long moment hung between them, heavy as desert twilight. Around them, the crowd grew restless. "Let him be," a townsman muttered. "Not our problem," came another voice. "Trains leavin', ain't our concern what happens after." Margaret kept her back straight, but her knees threatened to give. Hours on the train. Days of travel. No sleep. No plan. No one willing to look her in the eye. She pulled her children close. "Come on," she whispered. "We'll find somewhere." But there was nowhere. The cowboy finally spoke again. "You got 9 little ones?" he said. "Big family." Margaret braced for judgment. Instead, he swallowed hard and lowered his gaze. I know something about big families, he murmured. And about losing him. Margaret's breath hitched at the tremor in his voice. The cowboy lifted his head. Something in his expression changed, like a decision landing solid inside his chest. He stepped forward. I got a place, he said. Big house. Big land. Margaret shook her head quickly. Sir, we don't need charity. Ain't offering charity, ma'am. He glanced at the children again, faces tight with hunger and fear. Then he said it plain, clear, and without hesitation. I want all of you. Gasps rippled across the platform. Margaret froze. Lottie's eyes went wide. The baby hiccuped in her arms. The sheriff stepped closer, baffled. John Clay, you sure about this? The cowboy, Jonah, didn't look away from Margaret. I'm sure. His voice held the weight of years. I know what an empty house feels like. Don't aim to live in one anymore. The wind faltered. Even the train seemed to quiet. Margaret tried to speak, twice, before any sound came. Why us? Jonah's answer was simple. 'Cause you're standing here. 'Cause you need a place. And 'cause I can give one. He adjusted his hat, settling it back on his head. Come with me, he said softly. If you'll trust me. The children looked at their mother. Lottie slipped her hand into Margaret's. Ma, he ain't scared of us. Margaret's eyes stung, hope rising like a fragile dawn. Jonah waited. He didn't push. He just stood there, steady as canyon stone, offering shelter without demand. At last, Margaret nodded, barely, but enough. Jonah exhaled, relief hidden beneath the brim of his hat. Let's get you home, he said. He turned, leading the way toward his wagon. And as they followed, 9 children, a weary mother, and a cowboy who carried ghosts in his shadow, the old storyteller's voice seemed to echo in the settling dust. Everything changed that day, though none of them knew it yet. The wagon wheels groaned under the weight of children before Jonah even climbed up onto the seat. Night wind whipped across the station yard, snapping the lantern flame and pushing grit into everyone's eyes. Margaret steadied the youngest boy as he scrambled into the back. Hold tight, she whispered. Jonah flicked the reins once. The mules lunged forward. The wagon jerked hard. Lottie yelped, grabbing the wooden rail. Margaret caught her just in time. Easy, she murmured, though her voice trembled. Behind them, Burnt Creek shrank in the shadows, faces still watching from the platform, whispering like wind in dead grass. Whispers that stung in the cold air. Full man. 10 of him? He'll regret it. Should have let him go. Jonah didn't look back. He guided the wagon down the empty road, jaw set, eyes fixed on the horizon where the desert swallowed the last scraps of light. The children clung together in the rattling wagon bed. Every bump sent them bouncing. Every gust lifted loose hair and dust into the air. The baby cried, small hands trembling in the dark. Jonah heard it. He didn't turn, didn't speak, but his grip on the reins softened. He eased the wagon slower. You do that for us? Lottie asked from behind him. His voice was quiet. Reckon the little ones had enough Jocelyn for a day. No one spoke for several minutes. Only the creak of the wagon, the rhythmic clop of hooves, the desert breathing cold across their skin. Finally Margaret found her courage. We don't understand why you helped us, she said. Jonah didn't answer immediately. He watched the road twisting between low hills, pale sagebrush shimmering under moonlight. Then, softly, didn't seem right. Leaving you there. Margaret frowned. That can't be all. Jonah's fingers tightened around the reins. The leather creaked. That's enough, he said. His tone didn't invite questions. The road narrowed between high, jagged rocks. Wind moaned against them, echoing hauntingly through the dark. The mules hesitated, ears flicking nervously. Lottie shivered. Feels like something's watching. Jonah scanned the ridge. A shape moved, quick, silent, disappearing behind stone. Too large to be a coyote. Too balanced to be a wild dog. He didn't lift his revolver, but his free hand drifted closer to the holster at his hip. Stay down, he murmured. The children flattened themselves in the wagon bed. Margaret held the baby tight, her heartbeat pounding loud enough he could almost hear it. Another flicker of movement. Jonah's jaw tensed. But after a moment, the ridge went still. The wagon continued on. Margaret leaned forward slightly. "Are we in danger?" "Always are in these parts," Jonah replied. Nothing new. But something in his voice told her he wasn't talking about wild animals. Hours passed. The wind grew sharper. The stars scattered like shattered glass across the sky. When the land finally opened, the silhouette of a windmill appeared first, spinning slow, moaning with every turn. Jonah's ranch. The house stood beyond it, big and silent, porch sagging on one side, windows reflecting moonlight like watchful eyes. Tall grass brushed the broken fence. A barn door swung slightly in the breeze. Margaret inhaled sharply. "You live here alone." He didn't answer. He guided the wagon toward the porch and set the brake. Then he jumped down and reached for the sleeping 5-year-old first, lifting her gently as if she weighed nothing. "She yours?" he asked Margaret quietly. Margaret's expression softened. "All of them are." Jonah paused. Something unfamiliar flickered in his eyes. Respect and sorrow. "Strong woman," he said, almost to himself. He carried the little girl inside. The door screeched on its hinges as he pushed it open. The house smelled of dust and loneliness. Margaret followed with the baby. Lottie and the others stepped inside hesitantly, their feet stirring years of settled quiet. Jonah lit the lamp. Golden light revealed wide rooms, wooden beams, empty shelves, a long dining table scarred by time. A staircase climbed into shadows. Every corner felt wounded by absence. Lottie ran her fingers along a rocking chair. "Anybody sit here?" Jonah froze. His breath caught, barely, but Margaret saw it. "No," he said finally. "Not for a long while." The children spread out, exploring softly, as if afraid to disturb ghosts. Margaret touched the edge of the table. "Jonah, are you sure about all this?" He took off his hat, turning it slowly in his hands. "Ain't like I brought you here without thinkin'." "And what made you think of doing it?" she asked. He looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, his voice broke. "House has been quiet too long," he said. "Too damn long." Margaret felt her throat tighten. He didn't linger in the moment. Instead he strode to the back door, opened it, and stepped out into the night. "Jonah?" Margaret called. He didn't answer. She followed him outside, just enough to see him walking toward a small fenced area under the moon. A grave stood there. Flowers long dead still rested at its base. Jonah stared at it, hat dangling at his side, shoulders solid but trembling ever so slightly. Margaret stepped back, giving him privacy. Inside, the children had found blankets, a water pump, a fireplace. Excited whispers rose. "There's room here." "I found a bed." "Look, Mama, there's a whole other room." Warmth grew in the house as they explored. Sunlight had left, but something like morning had crept inside anyway. When Jonah finally returned, his face was composed again, closed, steady. "You all bedded?" he asked. "Almost," Margaret said. "The children are settling." Jonah nodded once. "Tomorrow we'll clean. Fix the broken boards. Got tools in the barn." He hesitated before meeting her eyes again. "If you decide to stay." Margaret held his gaze. "We're not running anymore. If you still want us here, we'll help you rebuild this place." He swallowed thickly. "I do." They stood in silence, the lamp flickering between them. Then a low sound drifted through the open window. A mule braying nervously. Hoofbeats in the distance, faint, fast, fading. Jonah turned sharply toward the sound. "That ain't right," he muttered. Margaret stiffened. "What is it?" "Riders," he said. "But they ain't comin' here yet." "Do you know who?" Jonah didn't answer. His hand hovered near the revolver he hadn't touched all night. Margaret saw his expression change, shadowed, alert, haunted by something she couldn't name. The wind rattled the windows. The children slept unknowingly. And Jonah Clay, who had spoken so softly hours before, now stood like a man listening for danger he'd met before. The tension in his shoulders told Margaret the truth. Whoever rode out there was the reason Jonah Clay lived alone. And now that she and her children were here, That danger was coming back. The banging started before dawn, hard, rapid knocks rattling the front door. Margaret jolted awake, baby clutched tight against her chest. The children stirred in their makeshift beds, blinking in fear. "Jonah!" Lottie whispered. "Someone's outside." Jonah was already there, standing in the hallway, boots on, revolver drawn, shoulders tense as iron. He held one hand up, signaling for silence. The knocking came again. 3 hits. 2 more. A pattern. Jonah's breath hardened. He knew it. He stepped to the door but didn't open it. "State your business." A man's voice answered, calm, almost amused. "Didn't think you'd be sleepin', Clay. Not with what you stole." The hairs on Margaret's arms rose. Jonah didn't flinch. "Ain't stolen nothin'." "Then open up," the voice teased. Jonah didn't. The baby whimpered. Margaret hushed her quickly, pressing the tiny head against her shoulder. Shadows shifted around the windows, figures moving outside. Lottie crawled closer to her mother, whispering, "Mama, are they bad men?" Jonah turned slightly, meeting Margaret's eyes just long enough to answer without speaking. He stepped back from the door. Away from the windows. The children dropped flat, hearts pounding against the floorboards. The voice outside chuckled. "You always were stubborn. Fine. We'll talk from here." Boots paced across the porch. "You rode into town yesterday," the man continued. "You brought something back. A fine wagon full." Jonah said nothing. "We want what you got," the man said. "You know why." Margaret's grip tightened on the baby. She ducked lower behind the table. Jonah's jaw flexed. "A family ain't something you take." A brief silence. Then the man laughed, slow, cruel, echoing across the empty yard. "Oh, but you know I will." Metal clicked, the unmistakable sound of a rifle lever cocking. Jonah grabbed the lantern from the wall, smashed the flame out with his palm, plunging the house into darkness. "Quiet," he whispered. The children froze. A rifle shot cracked, exploding the top corner of the door in a spray of splinters. Lottie covered her head. Margaret held the baby beneath her arms. Jonah didn't move from his stance, revolver ready. A second shot tore through the window. Glass shattered. Wind roared in. "Jonah!" Margaret hissed. "Stay down." Another shot hit the porch beam. Then the bootsteps outside retreated. The voice called out, "You've got until sundown, Clay. Bring what's mine to the river crossing. Or we'll come take it." The horses galloped away, hooves pounding, dust kicking up in the pale dawn light. Silence followed. Heavy. Smothering. Jonah kept still until the last echo faded across the canyon. Only then did he lower the revolver. Margaret rose slowly, shaking. "What do they want?" He holstered the gun. "To scare you." "That's not what I asked." Jonah exhaled hard, leaning both hands on the table. His shoulders looked heavier than they had hours earlier. "They ain't after you." Margaret stared. "Then what?" Jonah hesitated just long enough for truth to burn. "They're after me." When he stepped outside, the children followed to the doorway, though Margaret tried to hold them back. Morning light revealed hoof prints, deep, angry circles cut into the dirt. Jonah knelt beside them, running his fingers through the churned soil. "For riders," he murmured. "Headed west." Margaret stepped onto the porch. Her voice tightened with fear. "How long have they been after you?" "Long enough." "Then why bring us here?" she demanded. "Why put my children in danger?" He didn't look up. "Didn't expect them to find me." "Jonah, who are they?" His jaw locked. "Men I used to ride with." Margaret's breath stopped. "You were an outlaw?" she whispered. Jonah finally stood, turning to face her fully. His gray eyes were carved with something deeper than guilt, grief. "I was a different man then. Not one I'm proud of." Lottie peeked from behind her mother. "Are they gonna come back?" Jonah crouched down, meeting her eyes at her level. "Not if I stop him first." Margaret grabbed his arm, fierce and trembling. "You can't go after them alone." "Not going after 'em," he said calmly. "They gave me a place and time. I'll be there." "That's a trap." "I know." He walked past her toward the barn. Margaret followed. Jonah, you don't have to do this. He paused halfway to the doors. Dust swirled around him in the rising wind. Margaret, if I don't, they'll come here. They'll come when the little ones are sleepin'. When you can't run. When you can't hide. Her eyes filled with tears, she tried to blink away. He stepped closer, slow, careful. He wasn't a man who touched gently, but he spoke gently. I ain't lettin' that happen. Margaret swallowed hard. Then let us help. Jonah shook his head. This ain't your fight. You made us your family when you brought us here, she said, voice breaking. That means their danger is ours now. Jonah stared at her, stunned, unprepared for the weight of her words. He looked away first. I need to prepare, he murmured. Inside the barn, he opened a chest buried beneath old feed sacks. Metal clinked inside, 2 revolvers, a rifle, boxes of ammunition, a worn leather belt with notches carved deep. Dust glowed in sunbeams as he lifted the rifle. Margaret lingered at the doorway. Lottie peeked from behind her. Jonah ran a hand along the barrel, steady, familiar. You were good with these, Margaret said softly. He didn't answer. You're still good, she added. Jonah loaded the rifle with smooth, practiced motions that didn't belong to a quiet rancher. Lottie stepped forward cautiously. Why do those men hate you? Jonah closed the rifle chamber with a click. Because I walked away. They want you back? She asked. They want payback. Sundown felt close even though morning barely touched the sky. Jonah checked the saddle. Tightened the cinch. Packed ammunition and water. Every movement was deliberate. Controlled. Like a man sharpening the blade of an old life he hoped to never use again. Margaret approached him again, hands trembling. Don't go. He didn't look up. Gotta end this. You could die. Jonah finally met her eyes. Something gentler flickered there, something that wasn't fear, but acceptance. If I stand still, they'll come. If I run, they'll follow. And if you fight? He holstered his revolver. Then maybe they stop. Silence tightened around them. Margaret took a slow breath. At least, let me pray with you before you go. Something in Jonah's expression cracked. Just a little. Just enough. He nodded. The children gathered around, small hands gripping each other, faces pale with worry. Margaret bowed her head. Her voice shook as she began to speak, not loudly, not with ceremony, but with a mother's desperate fire. Protect him, she whispered, so he can come back to us. Jonah didn't flinch at the word us. But he felt it. He mounted the horse. He looked at the children, each one watching him with wide, trusting eyes he never expected to see on his porch. He dipped his hat. I'll be back before dark, he promised. The wind lifted his coat as he turned the horse toward the canyon trail. The children didn't move. Margaret didn't breathe. Jonah Clay rode out alone, toward the river crossing, toward the men who once called him brother, and toward the truth he'd been running from. And as he disappeared into the rising sun, dust trailing behind him like a ghost, Margaret whispered the fear none of the children dared to say. What if he never comes home? Dust spiraled upward as the gunshot echoed off the canyon walls. Eliza flinched, clutching the youngest child as Cade dropped to one knee beside the jagged rock, breath tight, eyes burning with the same fire that had once earned him a whisper name across the frontier. Reyes's men were closing in, footsteps scraping stone, voices barking orders. Move south. He's wounded. Cade pressed a hand to his shoulder, warm blood leaking between his fingers. Stay low, he murmured to the children. No matter what happens. Another bullet cracked the rock inches above their heads. Lila's voice trembled. You said you were taking us home. I am. Cade's jaw locked. But I need you brave for one more minute. The canyon wind howled, carrying the smell of gunpowder and desert sage. Cade steadied his breathing, eyes narrowing at the shifting shadows ahead, Reyes's silhouettes fanning out along the ridge, rifles catching the red evening light. Bootsteps closed from behind. Cade Marrow, a voice roared. Deep, furious. Come out and I'll let the kids walk. Stay hidin', and I'll take every one of 'em. Eliza's breath hitched. The children froze. Cade rose, Not fully, just enough to be heard. Reyes. His voice ricocheted through the canyon like a challenge carved from bedrock. You want me? Step into the open. Laughter rolled across the stone. You think you can bargain? You're a crippled ghost of what you used to be. The insult slid off Cade like dust. He shifted his stance, using the rock to brace his injured shoulder. The wind stilled. The canyon seemed to listen. A single clink, Reyes loading his rifle. Then Cade moved. A flash of steel. A single shot. Reyes's bullet hit the rock, spraying stone shards. Cade's revolver barked once, clean and cold. A scream choked off. One silhouette toppled. Chaos erupted. Gunfire burst from all directions. Cade shoved Eliza and the children deeper into the crevice. Don't run unless I say, he barked, then spun out from cover, firing left-handed, every shot deliberate. Each movement revealed something truer, a steadiness in pain, a precision too sharp for any ranch hand. Reyes shouted, spread out. He can't hit all of you. But he could. And he did. A man lunged down the slope, and Cade met him with a strike from the butt of his gun, sending him crashing into the dust. Another tried flanking from above. Cade pivoted, shot once, and the man crumpled into the brush. Still more came. Eliza crawled forward, voice cracking. Cade, stop. You'll bleed out. He didn't respond. His eyes were locked on the ridge, on Reyes, who now stepped into view, silhouetted against the dying sun. Massive. Hat-brim shadowing eyes full of rage. The outlaw leader raised his rifle slowly. Last chance. Drop the gun. Cade didn't drop it. He stepped forward, bleeding, breathing hard, but steady as old timber. Something in his posture changed, not defiance, but acceptance. An old truth rising to the surface. Lila's voice trembled. Mama, that's how the marshals stand in the stories. Eliza froze, realization dawning. Reyes snarled. Don't you dare tell me you're Deputy U.S. Marshal Cade Marrow, Cade said quietly. Badge or no badge? I finish what others run from. The canyon went deathly silent. Reyes fired first. Cade didn't flinch. He threw himself sideways, rolled, came up on one knee and fired twice, both shots sharp, echoing like iron bells. Reyes staggered, rifle slipping from his grasp. He fell hard, rolling down the rocky incline until his body thudded motionless in the sand below. The remaining men broke instantly, boots pounding as they scattered and vanished into the canyon's dying light. Silence swallowed everything. Cade's revolver lowered. His body swayed. Eliza rushed to him, catching his arm. You fool, why didn't you tell us who you were? He gave a weak grin. Didn't figure titles mattered to kids, just wantin' a safe place. The children swarmed him, Lila pressing her head into his uninjured side. But you did take us home, she whispered. Cade looked toward the horizon, toward his quiet ranch nested beyond those ridges. Yeah, he breathed. And no one's gonna take you from it. His legs buckled. Eliza tightened her hold, panic rising. Stay awake. Cade, stay with me. But he was smiling faintly. Reckon I've got one more mile in me. She tore fabric from her skirt, pressing against his wound. Don't you dare leave these kids. Not after what you just did. Cade's eyes fluttered open again. Not planning to. The wind picked up, carrying off the last whispers of gunfire. In the deepening dusk, Eliza and the children lifted him carefully, guiding him toward the trail. Behind them, the canyon lay still, silent witness to a legend reborn. Ahead, the world waited. A ranch house with open doors. 9 children who no longer had to fear the dark. A mother who finally had someone strong enough to walk beside her. And a man, once broken, once hidden, now revealed in full. Cade Marrow, the quiet cowboy who stepped forward when no one else would. The kind of hero old storytellers never forget. The kind of hero the frontier remembers forever.